Good day. Today's lecture is devoted to pedagogical technique as a means of improving the effectiveness of training. In university teaching, success depends not only on what is taught, but equally on how instruction is organized, presented, and guided. Therefore, pedagogical technique should be regarded as an essential element of professional mastery, since it enables the teacher to transform general instructional methods into precise and productive educational practice. At the first stage of lesson planning, the teacher selects the theoretical material, the tasks, and the exercises required for the topic. However, this is only the beginning. The more complex question concerns the form in which that material should be presented so that students can assimilate it more successfully. Accordingly, the teacher must consider the optimal academic load, maintain sustained student interest, and determine which forms, methods, and techniques are most appropriate. Thus, lesson planning is not a mechanical procedure, but a strategic pedagogical decision. A teaching method may be understood as a way of theoretical and practical mastery of educational material, that is, a means of achieving a learning objective through ordered activity. At the same time, a method is not limited to the action of the teacher alone. Rather, it includes the relationship between teaching and learning, between the teacher's guidance and the student's cognitive activity. Consequently, the educational, formative, and developmental functions of instruction depend directly on the appropriateness of the chosen method. If method provides the general direction of instruction, pedagogical technique operates at a more specific level. It consists of purposeful actions that increase the productivity of a lesson. Significantly, such actions are not always material in form. Sometimes even a brief remark, a well-placed question, or a carefully timed movement can change the meaning and effectiveness of the lesson. For this reason, pedagogical techniques should be viewed as precise operations that refine, strengthen, and individualize teaching practice. The slide presents several categories of learning techniques. Some are directed toward the activation of attention, memory, imagination, perception, and thinking. Others are intended to create problematic or searching situations in the mental activity of learners. A further category activates students' feelings and experience in connection with the material studied. In addition, there are techniques of control, self-control, and self-education, as well as techniques for managing collective and personal relations in the classroom. Taken together, these categories show that pedagogical technique affects intellectual, emotional, and social dimensions of learning simultaneously. Active learning methods are those that involve students in active thinking and practical activity while mastering educational material. In this context, it is useful to distinguish between non-simulation and simulation forms. Non-simulation methods include the problem lecture, problem seminar, heuristic conversation, educational discussion, independent work with literature, the round table, and brainstorming. Simulation methods, by contrast, recreate situations through business games, dramatization, game design, case methods, and collective mental activity. Hence, active learning may proceed either through intellectually intensified discussion or through modeled experience. The example from mathematics demonstrates clearly that active methods are not confined to humanitarian disciplines. Teamwork, discussion, competitions, mathematical battles, relay races, and didactic games all contribute to the development of mathematical abilities. Moreover, the inclusion of game elements makes the learning process more engaging and creates a constructive working atmosphere. Thus, serious subject learning and active participation should not be viewed as opposites. On the contrary, they may reinforce one another. Group work is presented here as a form of organization through which several goals are realized simultaneously. First, it increases the depth of understanding of educational material. Second, it stimulates cognitive activity and creative independence. Third, it contributes to the development of personality and social skills. Therefore, group work should be valued not merely as a change of classroom format, but as a pedagogical instrument capable of uniting educational, developmental, and social aims within one structure. The pedagogical benefits of group work extend well beyond the completion of shared tasks. Through collaborative activity, students develop self-criticism, assess their own capabilities more accurately, acquire tact and consideration for others, strengthen self-control, and build confidence through mutual support. In other words, group work contributes not only to academic progress, but also to personal discipline and social maturity. For this reason, its value must be considered in broader educational terms. An effective learning environment requires more than active methods alone. It is equally important to evaluate the psychological climate in the classroom. Students should not only work actively, they should also feel confident and comfortable within the learning process. Moreover, successful instruction depends on the active involvement of the learner in the lesson. When students understand what the teacher explains and are capable of communicating that understanding further, learning becomes more stable and more meaningful. This slide broadens the discussion by presenting active learning methods for the modern classroom as a comprehensive pedagogical guide. The key idea is not the rejection of traditional instruction, but its thoughtful combination with dynamic methods that engage students and strengthen foundational knowledge, skills, and abilities. Accordingly, modern teaching requires balance. Innovation becomes valuable only when it serves clear educational purposes. The opening phase of a lesson is of particular importance because it establishes the emotional and working rhythm of the educational event. Techniques such as my flower, portrait gallery, say hello with your eyes, say hello with your elbows, measure each other, and flying names are intended to create a positive classroom atmosphere and to direct students' attention from the very beginning. Although these methods may appear simple, they perform a serious pedagogical function. They reduce tension, build connection, and prepare the group for coordinated work. Once attention has been gathered, it becomes necessary to clarify goals and expectations. The techniques listed here, such as shopping list, expectation tree, license to acquire knowledge, and multicolored sheets, help identify student expectations, concerns, and priorities while simultaneously making the learning purpose more transparent. In this respect, clarity at the beginning of the lesson creates better conditions for purposeful participation and more conscious academic effort. At the stage of presenting new material, the teacher must orient students clearly within the topic. Methods such as info-guessing, cluster, and brainstorming are especially useful for this purpose. Info-guessing stimulates curiosity and anticipation. Cluster structures the principal directions of thought. Brainstorming activates prior knowledge and prepares students for further independent work. Therefore, the explanation of material becomes not a one-sided transfer of information, but an organized entry into active understanding. A lesson must also include stages in which students work with greater independence, exchange views, reflect on results, and restore concentration where necessary. Methods such as hives, business cards expertise, group consciousness map, traffic light priorities, info carousel, bus stop, and fare support analysis, discussion, and presentation. At the same time, active relaxation methods help restore working capacity, while final techniques such as wise advice, letter to yourself, everything is in my hands, final circle, and what have I almost forgotten, allow students to summarize the lesson and recognize what has been learned. Consequently, the later stages of a lesson are just as pedagogically significant as its beginning. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lecture has clarified the role of pedagogical technique in improving the effectiveness of training and has shown how methods, techniques, and lesson organization may be combined in a purposeful and professionally grounded manner.